and get started here. So the first item of business that I have is the approval of the minutes for February 18th, 23rd, 25th, and March 11th. Do I have a motion? Motion from Representative Berquist and a second from Representative Proctor. All right, is there discussion? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor of approving the amendments, say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Ayes appear to have it. Ayes do have it. Minutes are approved. All right. So it is my understanding we still have not received any bills from the Senate at this point in time. So the only item that we have available to us is HCR 5015. For a review of HCR 5015, the chair recognizes Revisor Mike Heim, possibly.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, can you hear me?
Sir.
Sir. Okay. This is a concurrent resolution urging Congress to reject legislation to federalize elections in the United States and oppose a bill that's called For the People Act of 2021. There was a bill introduced in the House Resolution 1 and one in the Senate. I think they're pretty much identical. And anyway, the resolution reads that it's a legislative overreach by the federal government. It impedes, it federalizes election administration, provides unfunded mandates, and is an unconstitutional mandate on states. Impedes free speech, restricts political activities, censorship of campaigns, and so on. Reduces public accountability of elected officials. Anyway, you get the idea. If you want more of an explanation, I will. I can send the committee a copy of a summary of the bill after the meeting.
Thank you, Revisor. Committee, are there any questions for the Revisor at this time? Seeing none, thank you, Revisor Heim. All right, so we're going to go ahead and open up the discussion and hearing on HCR 5015. Chair recognizes Representative Berquist for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move that we send 5015 out as presented for passage on the House floor.
Favorably?
Favorably.
All right, do I have a second? Second from Representative Lee Hahn. Committee, is there discussion? Representative Dodson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Please indulge me. I'm not familiar with kind of what's been done in the past on these, but you know, this is a matter of some gravity to me. And there are some of these, when the revisor was talking, you know, he probably mentioned 4 key items, maybe 5. And we've got several whereases in here that, and some of them seem to be duplicative. In addition, it seems to me we ought to anchor this thing pretty firmly on like the 10th Amendment and maybe the First Amendment with some specifics. That makes it much more powerful, but at this point, I'm probably a fly in the ointment. I just wanted to kind of say where my head was on this one, not having the experience of writing one of these before. So thank you.
Thank you, Representative. So, I mean, it just depends on how the resolution is written. You know, some things could be duplicative. It's just basically, you know, telling Congress why we think that they should oppose it, or our members, our delegation of Congress, why we should oppose it, and then the other various individuals in leadership. And so you are right to a certain extent. Could we have gone further or amended it or changed the language to where it talks about the 10th Amendment, states' rights, that kind of stuff? Yeah, we probably, I mean, that's absolutely, you could have absolutely said something along those lines. It's just it wasn't written that way. So, real quick, committee, I do actually have an amendment. Reviser, would you be willing to send the amendment to the committee assistant?
The committee assistant has the amendment. I think she will send it out right now.
Thank you. So my amendment body, or committee, while we are waiting on the amendment, it goes in and it's, in my personal opinion, it shortens it. Instead of saying repeatedly For the People Act of 2021 after the first iteration, it just makes it towards HR1 and S1, like we say there on lines 5 and 6. So that's basically, it's very simple. And so is there a second on that amendment? All right, Representative Dodson seconds the amendment. Body or committee, is there discussion? Representative Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think this amendment makes sense. I just wanted to clarify one thing, and maybe this would be an issue regardless. But my understanding is that this bill, HR1, has passed the U.S. House of Representatives, but it's still being dealt with the Senate. Is there any fear that if we go ahead and label, here's our stance on, I forget the Senate labeling, how they do it, S1, that the contents of it might change in a way that would maybe not reflect the will of this committee or the will of the House as a whole, right? If there are things that we say we are not for, but at the end of the process in the Senate, those things don't appear in what then is S1. That may just be a conceptual question, but that would be my concern, I guess, about labeling it around a specific bill number at the federal level when, we've all seen, at least even just in this session, the contents of a bill may change over the course of a committee process or being worked on the floor. I'm sure it's similar in the U.S. Senate and the U.S. House. So just my 2 cents there.
Thank you for the question, Representative. Representative Proctor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I would just say as a counterpoint to the previous representative's remarks, you could say that about HR1 as well, because if they come out with 2 separate versions, they'll go to conference and, it could change in texture as well. So the only way to be sure is to wait until it's passed into law, and by then it's too late. So I think at some point we've got to, kind of give the sense of the legislature, and we can't wait until the bill passes both houses and we know what it's going to finally look like.
So I would hope that our elected officials are smart enough to understand what our intent is with this, and by labeling it, they've named the bill For the People Act of 2021, and then they've associated that with HR1 and S1. So I'm assuming that, they're smart enough to figure out that if we send this to them and the contents of the bill change, that they're not going to have a hard time understanding what our intent was. So that's just my simple answer for you, Representative. Committee, is there further debate on the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor, I close on my amendment. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. It is amended. Committee, is there further discussion on HCR 5015? Representative Lehan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So last night I was able to go and speak to a multi-county Republican women's group, and there was actually a staff person from the Kansas Secretary of State's office there speaking about HR1. And one of his comments was interesting to me. He said that he had been on a conference call with Secretary of State's offices all across the country, and even the Democrats in those states are very, very concerned about HR1 in that it's, he said, it looks to be as though it was written by a bunch of 20-year-old something staffers who just took all their ideas and combined them. And they were very concerned about the actual applicability and enforceability of HR 1. And so I guess I would echo Representative Dodson in saying that the consensus of this group last night was certainly that if Kansas, because of course I spoke that we had this resolution today, and it was interesting how many people in that room wanted specifically 10th Amendment language in something that we were to present to our congressional staff in DC. So not a question, just a comment.
Which is absolutely appropriate during the debate portion of the bill, so thank you, Representative. Is there further discussion on the concurrent resolution? Representative Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know how many others have read HR 1 or SR, is it SR 1? The Senate version. At any rate, I think there are provisions in here that might be troubling for states like Kansas that don't suffer from some of the difficulties that other states do, that is, in particular, citizens in other states. There is a fairly concerted effort going on in some of those states right now to suppress the vote, both in terms of limiting polling places, limiting voter registration opportunities, confining the number of days that people can vote early, restricting some of those days, disallowing what's been happening. And it's pretty clear that there is an effort in some states to suppress the vote, and I'm pleased to say I don't see any such effort here in the state of Kansas. It is unfortunate when laws are written to apply to certain circumstances that they apply then to all states, and they may become problematic in some states that don't have a problem. There's a lot in HR 1 that I think is good. It's interesting, you may recall, Mr. Chairman, we had testimony from Americans for Prosperity, and the young lady that was testifying talked principally about the difficulties her organization had on the provisions relative to restricting free speech. And she didn't give any particulars, and I asked her if she could provide me with some, and she did drop by some material. At least it has her name as the one that dropped it off. But what's interesting about it, and in this material there is language that talks about the difficulties of HR 1 as they believe it applies to restrictions on free speech. But the material is actually drafted by the American Civil Liberties Union. I don't know if Americans for Prosperity is a chapter of the ACLU or vice versa, what the connection of the two organizations is. But what's interesting about the material that was dropped off, and by the way, I imagine that this page was not intentionally left blank, but there's nothing on there to say that, so we'll just assume it was inadvertent. But what's interesting about this material is that included in the material, in addition to the ACLU having some problems with what they believe are undue restrictions on speech, they also talk about much of what is good in HR 1. One of the things they point out is the commitment to restoring the protections of the Voting Rights Act, which I firmly support. I believe that the erosion of the Voting Rights Act has caused some problems in other parts of our country, the very parts in which the Voting Rights Act was intended to address. They talk about reauthorizing and supporting the Election Assistance Commission as a good part of HR 1. They talk about redistricting reform and how HR 1 addresses some of the partisanship that's involved in some states as it relates to redistricting and how this bill would address those problems. Talks about the provisions of H.R. 1 that are designed to combat deceptive political practices. The point is, Mr. Chairman, I am not going to be able to vote in favor of the motion to condemn H.R. 1 because while I might be able to agree that there are provisions that we should hone in on as being detrimental to our political system as we enjoy it in Kansas, there's just way too much that's good in that bill for me to take such a strident anti-H.R. 1 position. So I will be opposing the motion. And if there's someone that wants to work on honing in on the provisions that are the most objectionable, I might be persuaded to support a resolution that confines itself to those provisions without making a blanket condemnation on what I believe is a bill that contains many good things. It has passed the U.S. House. Senator McConnell indicates he has no intention of his party supporting the bill in the Senate. So in summary, I would say I wish we were spending our time on something that we really might have an impact on. I dare say no one in the U.S. Senate is really going to be persuaded by our resolution, regardless of how it was worded. But thank you for your effort, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative. And, hopefully someday the Kansas Senate will send us something to work on. So is there further discussion on HCR 5015? Representative Berquist.
Since I was 4 or 5 years old going into school, I've had a great appreciation for being a Kansan and for being a part of a state that was part of many states that were joined together for a common cause but not combined. And I studied history for the same reason. I studied the nuances of what an autonomous state could do for its own people and how that in a joint effort they could provide for defense and even go out and defend the world. And I look at the voting rights and the division of districts as being something that's very quite a critical matter for an autonomous state to take care of. And it's not autonomous because it doesn't care about anybody else. It's because it's a unique group of people. 13 colonies were unique groups of people from different backgrounds and different reasons for having come to America, and they settled together on purpose. And over a period of months, they worked out the Declaration, and over a period of years, they worked out the Constitution, and they worked it out as separate groups of people contributing their deep thoughts towards a combined effort for a common interest, and not to combine those states into one large state. I don't want our elections to become one large state. I don't want our division of our peoples or our way of life to become one large state. I want to remain Kansas, and someday if I choose to be a part of somewhere else, I'll choose knowing that I'm going to be a part of what some other people do. And I might even try to influence that one-on-one. So I like this resolution because it's the strongest statement we can make. Using the designation of H.R. 1 in this measure will be better recognized by people who are paying attention at all to the news. Thank you.
Further discussion on the resolution? Seeing none, Representative Lee Hahn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To my esteemed minority leader of this committee, a quick Google search of H.R. 1 yielded a couple of things. You wanted some specifics, and here's just a couple of specifics that concern me. For instance, same-day registration. That's very scary to me based on the fact that you cannot be able to vet and make sure that there's no verification of the accuracy of this voter information. I'll send you this document. It's from the Heritage Group. I'm sure it's a website you frequent. And you'll be able to see there are some very profound, stark issues that would indeed take away our states' rights, everything that we've been doing in this committee for the last several weeks, and really just trash them. And so I appreciate this resolution. I appreciate Americans for Prosperity and their speaker last week for bringing it to our attention here in the state of Kansas. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, or Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Representative Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate the point brought up about same-day registration. I know a lot of people are frightened by that. It doesn't scare me. We pretty much have that already with the number of people who vote provisionally. The election officers, I know, over the course of time have modified their position on that. There are states that have same-day voter registration, and it poses no problems. The fear of the unknown is a fear, and I appreciate that, but I think if indeed we had it, I think we could demonstrate that it's simply fear of the unknown and not fear of anything of a factual basis. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chair recognizes Representative Proctor.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Chair. And I would just say that, you know, it may be at some time that we do consider same-day registration or some other measure. My objection is that it would be imposed on us by the federal government against our will and against the will of the people of Kansas as represented by this legislature.
Further discussion on the resolution? Seeing none, the chair recognizes Representative Berquist.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we pass out HCR 5015 favorably as amended.
Okay, you've heard the motion. All those in favor? Okay, second. Representative Lehan. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, no.
No.
The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. HCR 5015 is passed. All right, is there anything else for the good of the committee at this time? Representative Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just request that my no vote be recorded.
All right, we can make that happen. Anybody else? Representative Lehan would like to record her vote as a yes. Any other committee members? Representative Collins is a yes. All right. Is there anything else for the good of the committee at this time? All right, seeing none. We will be on call with the chair. Watch your email boxes, listen for floor announcements. Hopefully something will shake loose from the Senate before too long. And we could very well end up in a conference committee. So just be aware of what's kind of going on. But as of right now, we don't have anything else scheduled. It is call of the chair. With that, we are adjourned.